I thought I knew my daughter better than anyone in the world. After 17 years of bedtime stories, scraped knees and heart-to-heart talks, I believed we had no secrets between us. But when I walked into Emma's room that Tuesday afternoon to put away her clean laundry, I discovered a truth so devastating that it shattered everything I thought I knew about my family. What I found hidden in her closet wasn't just teenage rebellion or typical secrets. It was evidence that my own daughter had been protecting me from a betrayal so deep, it would destroy our lives forever. The autumn sun filtered through Emma's bedroom window as I pushed open her door, arms full of freshly folded clothes. Her room was typically messy for a 17-year-old, textbooks scattered across her desk, makeup brushes on her dresser, clothes draped over her chair. But something felt different that afternoon, though I couldn't put my finger on what. I'd been doing laundry all morning while Emma was at school and my husband David was at his office downtown. It was one of those peaceful October days in our suburban Denver home, the kind where I actually enjoyed the mundane tasks of motherhood and marriage. The maple tree outside Emma's window was turning brilliant shades of red and gold, and I remember thinking how grateful I was for our quiet, stable life. I opened Emma's closet to hang up her school clothes, pushing aside the collection of homecoming dresses and winter coats she'd accumulated over the years. That's when I saw it, a shoebox pushed far back behind her boots, partially hidden under an old blanket. Something about the way it was concealed made me pause. I'm not the type of mother who snoops through her children's belongings. I'd always believed in giving Emma privacy and trusting her judgment. But something about that hidden box triggered an instinct I couldn't ignore. Maybe it was the way she'd been acting lately, distant, secretive, jumping whenever her phone buzzed. Maybe it was the way she'd been looking at her father with an expression I couldn't quite read. I pulled the box out carefully, my hands trembling slightly. It was heavier than I expected, and when I lifted the lid, my breath caught in my throat. Inside were dozens of photographs, printed emails, bank statements, and what looked like legal documents. But it was the photograph on top that made my blood run cold. It was a picture of my husband David kissing another woman in what appeared to be a hotel room. The woman was young, maybe in her 20s, with long blonde hair and a figure that made me suddenly conscious of my own 45-year-old body. They were embracing passionately, completely unaware they were being photographed. My legs gave out and I sank onto Emma's bed, the box spilling its contents across her pink comforter. There were more photos, David and this woman at restaurants, walking hand in hand through downtown Denver, entering what looked like an apartment building together. The timestamps on the photos went back months, some as far as last spring. But the photographs were just the beginning. Underneath were printed emails between David and someone named Melissa. Intimate messages that made me feel sick to my stomach. Messages talking about their future together, about how he was working on the situation at home, about how they just needed to be patient a little longer. My hands shook as I read email after email, each one more devastating than the last. David wasn't just having an affair, he was planning to leave us. But worse than that, he was systematically moving money out of our joint accounts, transferring funds to accounts I'd never heard of, preparing to disappear with our life savings. One email in particular made my heart stop. "Don't worry, baby. I've been moving money for months. She has no idea about the offshore accounts or the property I bought in your name. By Christmas I'll have everything transferred and we can start our new life together. She'll never find us." I stared at the words until they blurred through my tears. 22 years of marriage, 17 years of raising Emma together. And David was planning to steal everything and disappear with a woman young enough to be his daughter. But how did Emma get these photos? How did she access his emails? And why hadn't she told me? I heard the front door slam downstairs. Emma was home from school. I quickly gathered all the evidence back into the box, my mind racing. Should I confront her immediately? Should I wait and think about this? Should I call David and demand an explanation? "Mom." Emma's voice called from downstairs. "I'm home." "I'll be right down, honey," I managed to call back, though my voice sounded strange even to my own ears. I looked at myself in Emma's mirror and was shocked by what I saw. My face was pale, my eyes red and swollen from crying, my hands still shaking. I couldn't let Emma see me like this, not until I understood what was happening. I splashed cold water on my face in Emma's bathroom and tried to compose myself. But as I walked downstairs to face my daughter, I realized that everything I thought I knew about my family was a lie. And somehow my 17-year-old daughter knew the truth that I'd been blind to. Emma was in the kitchen, pulling ingredients out of the refrigerator to make her after-school snack. She looked so normal, so innocent in her school uniform and ponytail. But when she looked up at me, I saw something in her eyes that I'd never noticed before. A weight, a sadness that seemed far too heavy for someone her age. "How was school?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Fine," she replied, but she was studying my face carefully. "Mom, are you okay? You look upset." I wanted to tell her everything right then. I wanted to break down and cry and ask her to explain what I'd found in her closet. But something held me back. If Emma had been keeping this secret, there had to be a reason. "I'm just tired," I lied. "Long day of housework." Emma nodded, but I could tell she didn't believe me. She made her sandwich in silence, and I noticed how she kept glancing at me when she thought I wasn't looking. Finally she spoke. "Mom, can I ask you something?" My heart started pounding. "Of course, sweetheart. Are you and Dad happy?" The question hit me like a physical blow. How was I supposed to answer that? An hour ago I would have said yes without hesitation. Now I didn't know anything anymore. "Why would you ask that?" I said carefully. Emma set down her sandwich and looked directly at me. "You guys don't talk anymore." "Not really. And Dad's been working late a lot, and when he is home he's always on his phone." "And you?" He paused, searching for the right words. "You seem lonely, Mom. Even when we're all together you seem lonely." I felt tears threatening again. Had it been that obvious? Had I been so blind to my own unhappiness that even my teenage daughter could see it? "Marriage is complicated, Emma," I said finally. "Your father and I have been together for a long time. Sometimes couples go through rough patches." "Is that what this is? A rough patch?" There was something in her voice, an urgency that made me look at her more closely. She knew something. I was sure of it now. "Emma," I said slowly, "is there something you want to tell me?" For a moment I thought she was going to confess everything. Her eyes filled with tears and she opened her mouth as if to speak. But then she shook her head and picked up her sandwich. "No, Mom. I just worry about you sometimes." That night I lay in bed next to David, listening to him breathe and wondering how long he'd been lying to me. He'd come home at his usual time, kissed me on the cheek like he always did, and asked about my day like nothing had changed. But everything had changed. I knew the truth now, even if I didn't understand all of it yet. I studied his face in the dim light from our alarm clock. This man I'd loved for over 2 decades, the father of my child, my partner in everything, he was a stranger. How long had he been planning this betrayal? How long had he been looking at me and thinking about how to escape? The next morning, David left for work early, claiming he had an important meeting. Emma had already left for school, and I was alone in the house with my devastating knowledge. I went back to Emma's room and retrieved the box, spreading its contents across my kitchen table like pieces of a puzzle I needed to solve. I studied the photographs more carefully this time, looking for clues about when and where they were taken. Some were clearly taken with a telephoto lens from a distance, professional surveillance photos. Others looked like they might have been taken with a cell phone, closer and more intimate. The bank statements were even more damaging than I'd initially realized. David had been systematically draining our accounts for over a year, moving money in small amounts that wouldn't trigger any automatic alerts. Our retirement savings, Emma's college fund, even the emergency account we'd built up over years of careful budgeting, it was all being stolen from under my nose. But the most shocking discovery was a real estate document showing that David had purchased a condominium in Melissa's name 6 months ago. A $400,000 property bought with money that should have been securing our family's future. I was so absorbed in the evidence that I didn't hear Emma come home early from school until she was standing in the kitchen doorway, staring at the papers spread across our table. "Mom," she whispered, her face going white. "You found it." We stared at each other across the kitchen, the truth finally out in the open between us. Emma's eyes filled with tears and she looked younger than her 17 years. "How long have you known?" I asked quietly. Emma came into the kitchen and sat down across from me, her hands shaking. "Since last spring. I was using Dad's laptop to work on a school project because mine was broken, and I accidentally opened his email instead of mine. I saw messages from someone named Melissa, and at first I thought it was just work stuff. But then I read them and..." She trailed off, wiping tears from her cheeks. "Why didn't you tell me?" "I wanted to," Emma said desperately. "I wanted to tell you so many times. But I was scared. I was scared you'd blame me for snooping, scared you'd be angry, scared it would destroy our family. And I kept hoping maybe I was wrong, maybe there was some explanation. I reached across the table and took her hands. Oh, sweetheart. You should never have had to carry this burden alone. I hired a private investigator, Emma confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. I used my babysitting money and the cash Grandma gave me for my birthday. I needed proof, real proof, in case you didn't believe me or in case Dad tried to deny it. I stared at my daughter in amazement. While I'd been obliviously going about my daily routine, my 17-year-old had been conducting a professional investigation into her father's betrayal. The private investigator found out about the money too, Emma continued. Dad's been stealing from us for over a year. He's planning to disappear right after Christmas, Mom. He's already given notice at his job, told them his last day is December 23rd. He's going to take everything and leave us with nothing. The room spun around me as the full scope of David's betrayal sank in. This wasn't just an affair, it was a calculated plan to destroy his family financially and emotionally. There's more, Emma said, pulling out a folder I hadn't noticed before. The investigator found out that Melissa isn't just some random woman. She's been targeting married men with money. Dad is the third husband she's helped steal from his family. The other two men are now bankrupt and divorced, and she moved on to new victims. I felt like I was going to be sick. David wasn't just cheating on me, he was being conned by a professional predator who specialized in destroying families. Emma, I said, trying to process everything, what were you planning to do with all this information? My daughter looked at me with an expression far too mature for her age. I was going to wait until right before Christmas when he was about to leave and then give you everything. I wanted to make sure you had enough evidence to stop him from taking our money and to make sure he couldn't hurt us anymore. I pulled Emma into my arms, holding her tight as we both cried. My brave, brilliant daughter had been protecting me for months, carrying this terrible secret and planning our salvation while I remained completely unaware. I'm so sorry you had to go through this alone, I whispered into her hair. But we're going to handle this together now, okay? You and me, we're going to make sure your father doesn't destroy this family. Emma pulled back and looked at me with hope in her eyes for the first time in months. What are we going to do? I looked at the evidence spread across our kitchen table, months of careful documentation that proved David's betrayal beyond any doubt. Then I looked at my daughter, who had shown more courage and wisdom than I'd given her credit for. We're going to beat him at his own game, I said. But first, I need you to tell me everything. What do you think Emma should do next? Leave a comment with "Fight Back" if you believe they should expose the father's plan, and don't forget to subscribe for more incredible family stories. Over the next hour, Emma told me everything. She'd been living with this knowledge for 8 months, watching her father lie to my face every single day while planning our destruction. She documented his movements, recorded phone conversations when she could, and even followed him on several occasions to gather photographic evidence. I felt like I was going crazy, Emma admitted. Sitting at dinner, listening to him ask about my day and talk about our family vacation plans, knowing that he was planning to abandon us. I wanted to scream at him so many times. I understood now why Emma had seemed distant and moody lately. She hadn't been going through typical teenage rebellion, she'd been carrying the weight of our family's future on her shoulders. The hardest part, Emma continued, was watching you be so happy and trusting. You'd talk about retirement plans and Emma's college fund, and I knew he was stealing all of it. I wanted to protect you, but I also didn't want to be the one to destroy your world. You didn't destroy anything, sweetheart, I assured her. Your father did that all by himself. You've been trying to save us. Emma showed me her detailed timeline of David's activities. She tracked his late nights at work, and discovered they were actually dates with Melissa. She documented his unusual financial behavior and even found evidence that he'd been lying about business trips, several of which had actually been romantic getaways. I know this sounds crazy, Emma said, but I think we should let him think his plan is working. If we confront him now, he might panic and disappear with whatever money he's already moved. But if we wait and catch him in the act, we can stop him and maybe get our money back. I stared at my daughter in amazement. Emma, that's actually brilliant. But it's also dangerous. What if something goes wrong? I've been thinking about this for months, Mom. I have a plan. Emma pulled out a notebook filled with her careful handwriting, a detailed strategy for exposing David's betrayal and protecting our assets. She'd researched divorce law, asset protection, and even criminal fraud statutes. My 17-year-old daughter had become an expert in financial crime. First, Emma explained, we need to secure our own evidence. I've been copying everything to a cloud storage account that Dad doesn't know about. But we need to make sure we have access to all the financial records before he realizes we know. How do we do that? Dad keeps all his important documents in his home office. I know where he hides the key to his filing cabinet. We need to photograph everything: bank statements, investment accounts, insurance policies, everything. We need our own copies before he can destroy the evidence. I felt a chill run down my spine. Emma, if your father is capable of what you're describing, what do you think he'll do if he catches us? Emma's face grew serious. That's why we have to be smart about this. We can't let him know we suspect anything. We have to act normal, keep him comfortable until we're ready to spring the trap. That evening, David came home at his usual time, and I had to use every ounce of acting ability I possessed to behave normally. I kissed him hello, asked about his day, and listened to his lies about meetings and deadlines while knowing the truth about where he'd really been. How was your day, honey? He asked, settling into his favorite chair with a beer. Oh, the usual, I replied, my voice sounding surprisingly normal. Laundry, grocery shopping, nothing exciting. David nodded absently, already checking his phone. I watched him typing what I now knew were probably messages to Melissa, planning their future together while sitting in the living room of the family he was about to destroy. Emma came downstairs for dinner, and I marveled at how well she was hiding her emotions. She chatted with David about school, asked him about his work, even laughed at his jokes. If I hadn't known the truth, I never would have suspected that she was planning his downfall. After dinner, David announced he had to work late in his home office. Big presentation tomorrow, he said, kissing my forehead. Don't wait up. As soon as his office door closed, Emma and I exchanged glances. This was our opportunity. He'll be on video calls with Melissa for at least an hour, Emma whispered. That's his pattern. We have time. We crept upstairs to David's office, and Emma produced a small key from her pocket. I made a copy months ago, she explained, unlocking his filing cabinet. Inside we found everything: bank statements showing the systematic theft of our money, correspondence with lawyers about asset protection, even a fake passport application. David had been planning this betrayal in meticulous detail. I photographed everything with my phone while Emma kept watch. The scope of his deception was breathtaking. He'd opened accounts in other states, purchased property under false names, and even established a fake business to hide money transfers. Mom, Emma whispered urgently, look at this. She handed me a letter from a divorce attorney, dated just 2 weeks ago. David had already begun preliminary divorce proceedings, planning to file papers the day after Christmas when he disappeared. The letter outlined a strategy to minimize his financial obligations and maximize his ability to hide assets. He's not just leaving us, I realized with growing horror. He's planning to make sure we get nothing in the divorce. We finished photographing the documents and carefully returned everything to its original position. As we crept back downstairs, I heard David's voice through his office door, speaking in the loving tone he used to use with me. I can't wait to start our new life together, baby, he was saying. Just a few more weeks and we'll be free. Emma and I looked at each other, and I saw my own determination reflected in her eyes. David thought he was so clever, so careful in his planning. But he'd made one crucial mistake: he'd underestimated the 2 women he was betraying. The next few weeks were the most difficult of my life. Every day I had to pretend to be the loving, trusting wife while knowing that my husband was systematically destroying our family. I had to smile when he kissed me goodbye, knowing he was going to meet his mistress. I had to discuss Christmas plans, knowing he was planning to disappear forever. But Emma and I used that time wisely. We consulted with a divorce attorney, opened our own secret bank account, and even hired our own private investigator to continue monitoring David's activities. We were building an airtight case against him. The breakthrough came 3 weeks before Christmas. Emma's private investigator discovered that David had booked flights to the Cayman Islands for December 26th, 2 tickets, one for him and one for Melissa. He was planning to disappear to a country with no extradition treaty, taking our life savings with him. This is it, Emma said, showing me the flight confirmations. This is when we stop him. I looked at my daughter, this brave, brilliant young woman who had saved our family, and felt a surge of pride mixed with sadness. She should have been worrying about prom dresses and college applications, not orchestrating the downfall of her own father. Are you ready for this? I asked her. Emma nodded firmly. I've been ready for months, Mom. It's time to show Dad that he's not as smart as he thinks he is. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. On December 23rd, David's last day of work, we would confront him with all the evidence. But we wouldn't do it privately, we'd do it in front of witnesses with legal representation present, ensuring that he couldn't deny anything or try to manipulate the situation. Emma had even arranged for the private investigator to be present with additional evidence, including recent photographs of David and Melissa together and documentation of his most recent financial transfers. He's going to be shocked, Emma said with satisfaction. He thinks we're just two helpless women who don't understand money or legal matters. He's about to find out how wrong he is. December 23rd arrived gray and cold with snow threatening in the afternoon sky. David came home from his last day of work in an unusually good mood, probably thinking about his escape the next day. I thought we could have a nice family dinner tonight, he announced. Maybe order from that Italian place you like. I smiled and agreed, knowing it would be our last meal together as a family. Emma helped me set the table, and we made small talk about Christmas plans that David had no intention of keeping. Just as we were finishing dinner, the doorbell rang. I'll get it, Emma said, jumping up from the table. She returned with our divorce attorney, the private investigator, and a process server. David's face went white as he realized what was happening. David Morrison, the process server said formally. You're being served with divorce papers and a restraining order freezing all marital assets. David stood up so quickly his chair fell over. What the hell is going on here? I stood up too, feeling calmer than I had in months. What's going on, David, is that we know everything. We know about Melissa, we know about the money you've stolen, and we know about your plan to disappear tomorrow. David's eyes darted between me and Emma, and I saw the moment he realized his daughter had been the one to expose him. Emma, he said, his voice shaking with rage, what have you done? I protected my mother, Emma replied calmly. Something you should have been doing instead of betraying her. The private investigator stepped forward with a thick folder. Mr. Morrison, we have documented evidence of your affair, your financial fraud, and your plans to flee the country. The FBI has been notified about the money laundering, and your passport has been flagged. David sank back into his chair, the reality of his situation finally hitting him. You can't do this. That money is mine too. I earned it. Actually, our attorney interjected. Under Colorado law, systematically hiding marital assets and planning to defraud your spouse is a criminal offense. You're looking at serious jail time, not just divorce proceedings. I watched my husband of 22 years crumble before my eyes, and I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no anger, just a profound sense of relief that the lies were finally over. The house, the cars, all the bank accounts are frozen, the attorney continued. Your flight tomorrow has been cancelled, and Ms. Melissa Patterson has been arrested for fraud in connection with her previous schemes. David looked up sharply. Melissa's been arrested? She's a professional con artist, Dad, Emma said quietly. She's done this to other families. You weren't special to her, you were just another mark. The devastation on David's face was complete. Not only had his plan failed, but he was realizing that the woman he'd thrown away his family for had been using him all along. I want you out of this house tonight, I said firmly. You can take your personal belongings, but everything else stays here until the court decides how to divide our assets. David looked around the dining room at the family photos on the walls, the Christmas tree Emma and I had decorated together, the life he'd chosen to destroy. This is my home too. Not anymore, Emma said. You gave up the right to call this home when you decided to steal from us and abandon us. As David packed his belongings under the watchful eye of the private investigator, I felt Emma slip her hand into mine. Are you okay, Mom? She asked quietly. I squeezed her hand and looked at this remarkable young woman who had saved our family. I'm better than okay, sweetheart. I'm proud. So incredibly proud of you. 6 months later, David was sentenced to 3 years in prison for fraud and money laundering. Most of our stolen money was recovered and Emma's college fund was restored. Melissa received 5 years for her role in multiple fraud schemes. Emma graduated as valedictorian and received a full scholarship to study criminal justice. She wants to help other families who've been victimized by financial fraud. As for me, I discovered that I was stronger than I'd ever imagined. I went back to school, earned my real estate license, and started my own business. The house that David had tried to steal became the foundation of my new independence. The most important thing I learned was that sometimes the people we think need our protection are actually the ones protecting us. Emma saved our family not just with her investigation skills, but with her courage to do what was right even when it was terrifying. David thought he was so clever, planning his escape while keeping his wife and daughter in the dark. But he forgot that the people who love you most are also the ones who know you best. And sometimes they know you better than you know yourself. The truth Emma tried to hide wasn't just about her father's betrayal, it was about her own incredible strength and wisdom. She taught me that family isn't just about blood relations or marriage certificates. It's about the people who stand by you when everything falls apart, who fight for you when you can't fight for yourself, and who love you enough to carry unbearable burdens to keep you safe. What do you think about this incredible story of a daughter's courage and a mother's strength? Have you ever discovered a truth that changed everything about your family? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more amazing stories of families who overcame impossible odds. Hit that notification bell so you never miss our latest uploads. And check out our next story about a woman who thought she was helping a stranger, only to discover he was about to change her life forever.